Okay, so I've just reset and I'm going to make another tile, and using the box tool, just going to click and drag anywhere. I've got my units on millimetres, so I'm going to bring this up to set the height, and you can see over there in millimetres it is about 100 mil, which is way too thick, but I can switch to the modify tab now and put in the sizes. And a good little tip there, if you're not sure which direction these things are going, which way is the length and which way is the width, it's hard to tell sometimes because your view can be from any direction. Just click and drag on the little spinners and then you can easily see. So maybe this time I want the longer dimension to be done with the width. And so then, now I know which way that's going, I can type in 1800 for the width. Such a big tile, that's 1.8 metres. That's my height.
And we're experimenting with really intricate little things, and it's kind of a bit hard to imagine how it would look when it's that size.
Yeah.
You're actually going to make a model of it that size.
No, of course not, yeah. I mean, even a 1 to 50 model is going to be, well, no, it wouldn't be, probably what are you doing, 1 to 20 models or 1 to 10? 1 to 10, yeah, that would make sense. And that'll be a big, well, yeah, fairly big model. So, so the height was 600, wasn't it? Yeah. And then the thickness.
Minimum 6 mil, maximum 14
Gee,
mil.
6 mil for 1.8. God, I can't believe that would even.
It's used as a special eco material.
Right, wow.
Make it run molding, so it's new material.
Yeah.
Panels are made of.
Right, wow. Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, I'm interested in new materials, so that's good. So 6 mil is going to look super thin. So what did you say, 14 was the maximum?
Yeah.
Yep, so let's do 14. Just looks a bit more real. Okay, so the material then, so this is really what I wanted to go into. I've given you some notes on materials, and I'll flick through those in a minute. So that's intro number 5. And it's another big file that has a lot of detail, but if you're interested in 3D, that's going to teach you a lot.
Yeah.
And so, especially if you're interested in using Maya, it's got the approach in Max that's similar to Hypershade, which is the way it's done in Maya, using these hierarchies. And even if you don't know what all this means, it's good just to see that, so you know then with these programs you can see the hierarchy that in Revit is often hidden or buried. And it shouldn't be scary. Once you get used to it, it actually makes things easier. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways of getting the displacement using the material editor. The slate material editor is the one with the hierarchies visible, and you can work in this space here to create those, but just so it's easier to fit on the screen, I'm going to go to the compact material editor, and I'm going to choose a new material slot. So you might remember from the previous exercise making things like the standard material, but once you've got a bit of experience with the program, you'll probably use the Arc and Design material mostly, especially when you're using Mentorate. So that's a good one for almost anything. And you can see all of these plain grey ones are Arc and Design. If you click on one accidentally that is something else, Autodesk Ceramic or War Paint, just find one that's Arc and Design. So clicking on the drop down, you'll see then that we have ceramic in the list. You've got two options, glazed ceramic and glazed ceramic tiles. So the tiles, double clicking, will give you the grout as well, but we're making an individual tile here, so we don't need the grout, so instead I'm going to choose glazed ceramic. And it's similar to this one above here, the, where is it, sorry, Autodesk Ceramic. It just has, I think it's an easier interface to work with. It might look harder because this one is the one made for ceramic, just for ceramic, but this one here shows you all the different options and makes it, I think, easier. So I've got a ceramic material, I can just drag that now onto my object and it'll kind of render like ceramic. Let's just click on the render button to see that. But I thought this time as well, just to show you how much better it'll look in context, I'll show you how to put in a quick environment so you can render it with some sort of background and some lights as well. because this is another quick thing you can do using the presets. Back into the Create tab, you've got in the Primitives panel another really useful object. I think it's the next most useful after box. You've got Plane. So I'm just going to click and drag to make a ground surface. That'll do. And just like the box, I can go to the Modify tab to see all of the properties and make it bigger if I want it, or longer or wider. And I don't need all the segments, so I'm going to set the length and the width segments down to 1. So I've got a simple surface there that will be my floor. Now I'm going to get another material slot and make sure it's Arc and Design, and then from that drop down list simply going to choose, let's go for glossy this time, glossy varnished wood. So there's my wood material. Done. I can drag that across. The only problem is it's a bit hard to see, so I'm going to click on this button here to see the texture. So if you're ever having trouble seeing your textures from new materials, that button there generally will turn them on. And it might be hard to see, it is there, but I've got to zoom in so you can see the boards, the floorboards. They're just a bit small. It's a simple option. When you click on the M button there, that will take you to the map, same as you have in Revit. And you just need to tick this button here, use real world map scale, and then you can put the size in just like in Revit. So that button there, view image, will show you the bitmap that it's using, and I know from experience that a size, something like 600 by 1200 will work pretty well for this one. So there it is, I can see that really clearly now in the viewport. You can always change the angle if you want to make it go the other way. Just change the W angle to rotate it. Oh, I think it was actually better the other way. Alright, so I'll just click on the teapot to render that. You can see it's looking okay, but a little bit flat maybe. So next thing I'm going to put in is a light. Again, these are just simple things you can put in using the presets. On the Create tab, you have the Lights button, and I'm going to put in a target light, and you'll get a message about photometric light creation. Just say yes. Again, trying to use all the automatic shortcuts. And I'm going to click and drag in my top viewport. So clicking places the light, and then when you drag, you place the target and then release to set that. Now you can see from the left and the front viewport that's flat on the ground, so I'm going to right click and then using the y-axis there, I've got move on, so I can just click and drag to lift that up off the ground. Now I want to see that light affecting the perspective viewport, so I'm going to right click there to make it active, and then right click on shaded and go to lighting and shadows, realistic first, and then back to lighting and shadows, illuminate with scene lights. So now I can see the effect of the light. And if I go to the Modify tab, I can make some changes. So I'm going to go to the templates, just like materials, you have templates for lights. And, well, what are some lights you might have used previously? Have you had a lighting subject? We've probably done some lighting in different subjects. So yeah, downlights, halogen, often is good for downlights. They're quite warm. You also have these fluorescent. That's that's a cove. This is a pendant fluorescent, which are a bit cooler. And then you have the bulb lights, but that pendant fluorescent should be okay. So you can see now that's looking much more realistic. With no real work, I've just used presets straight out of the box. And I can maybe bring the light a little bit more overhead. Maybe bring the tile a little bit closer. Oops, wrong viewport. Okay, so then, final trick I'll show you before coming back to the tile, if I put a background wall in there, that will help a lot. So I'm just going to put a box up here. And maybe another one even down here. Let's make this one a bit higher. So these are like walls and reflect the light, and I could even put a material onto those, but even without that it will just make the lighting a bit more realistic. And so there I can see probably that my light is quite bright for the environment, and I can maybe fine tune that or lift it up higher off the ground as well. Might do something similar. Get a few different options there. Okay, so going back to the material for my tile, to put a texture onto that surface, the easiest way is to click on the grey button next to the colour swatch and then use bitmap. So if you double click on bitmap, then you can choose any image, and so I'll go to the P drive and interior design and find the material images folder and see if there's an image that I like the look of. So yeah, maybe I'll do this one, just something different. Okay, so that is now part of the material. If I double click there, you can see it, but it's way too small. And again, it's that same option, real world map scale, and this time I don't want it. Because I don't want to set a size, I just want this image to take up the whole surface no matter what size it is. So that's why that's a useful option. It's one you just don't have in Revit. So here, tiling 1 and 1. And that's it. So then to see that in the viewport, this button here will show it with the map, ignoring any of the other higher level settings. Again, it's small though, and that's because the object also has the option to use a real world map size. So I'm going to turn that off, and there we are, that's now working. So that's fitting the image to the surface no matter what, but maybe I want that to be less wide because the proportions are different. So I could say, well, really, I want 0.5 of this image, half of the image, no matter what, to fit on this surface in that direction and in the vertical direction, and then going across, I want the whole image. So if you haven't seen U and V before, U and V is just X and Y in your material space. So they have UVW instead of X, Y, Z. And that's it. So if I render now, we'll see the tile pattern or the image pattern with that bitmap. So to change that to something else, maybe I think, well, that doesn't really work. So I'm going to click on this bitmap option here and try another image. Render again. That's it. So that's to put a pattern on a flat surface. If you want an engraved or an embossed surface, you'll see there is an option in the material to do a displacement. So I'll show you that. It does work. And a really good thing to try once you start getting the hang of materials is just experimenting. So here I'm going to drag this across to the right, and that way I can always go back to the first one. And then this is a copy. So I'll make some changes to my copy. And so there, I've just scrolled down so you can see the button at the top, the M, is basically a shortcut, the one next to the colour swatch, to one of these slots right down the bottom. So these slots show you all the different ways you have of applying maps. And you can tell which one is being used because you can see they all say none except for this one. So I'm going to drag that up onto displacement. So that's how easy it is. Once you get a map set up, unlike Revit where you've got to go and set it all up again if you want to use the same map, say for a bump or something, which is really tedious, in Max you can just copy it onto a different slot. I'm going to set it to copy, not instance, because I want to change some settings. And I'm going to turn that diffuse one off for now. Just going to make it so that it doesn't do anything. And that way it'll have the colour, just going back to the top, whatever colour's set here. Maybe I'll make that a bit lighter. And you can tell it's got a lowercase m instead of uppercase. So I'm just going to render now. Now the displacement seems to be still doing something. Let's just cancel that. I'm going to clear the displacement. The diffuse. So, okay, so it seems to be still. Oh, sorry, I'm stupid. Okay, so I forgot to do the most important thing, which is to replace it. So I've made my changes. Now I want to put that into the scene instead of the original one. So you have this button here next to Get Material, the one next to it, Put Material to Scene. And now when I render, it will render with my new material. I can see a bit of the effect, but I've got to go now back to the settings maybe and increase that. So back to displacement up here. So 1, I could make that a bit higher. Let's make it 2. But it's doing something. But it's also happening to the sides, and I don't want that. So what do you do there? A couple of options. First thing is to try putting a custom UVW map. So remember, UVW is your material coordinate space, so a UVW map lets you control the way the material is applied to this surface. And if I leave it on planar, with any luck, it will just map in the direction I want, and it's doing it. But it's also getting a bit difficult to control that. I now see it's because I've got real world map size. So real world map size needs to be turned off, so let's just do that again. That's better. Okay, so you can see pretty clearly it is mapping in that direction, but the sides still are getting some unusual effects. Alright, so you might remember in that revolving door tutorial that you use that door template, and you can do something similar if I convert it to an editable poly, or use the option, actually this is a really good case where you could use edit poly. And now I'm going to go down to the, down to polygon, just select the top there, and find set ID and make that 2. That's it. So if I go here to select ID and put a 1, it should, let's just do that properly. Select ID, that should select the rest. Why isn't it doing it? Oh, they've gone to 4. Okay. So sometimes that happens. I'm just going to select all of it and then use Alt to deselect the top and make sure they're 1. That should be better. So shows you why it's good to check. So here we go. So 1, there we go. It's selected everything except for the top. And then if I go to 2, it'll select the top. And if we do clear selection and then to 2 again, it'll just select the top. Okay, so I've got 2 material IDs now. Back into here. Going to make a new material. Just clicking on the material type there. Remember, this multi-sub object is the one you made with the revolving door. They're quite easy once you know what they do. All they do is let you assign more than one material. So if I go set number here, I'm going to set that to 2. I only need two materials. Okay, so I've got my displaced material, and I've got, if I go over here, I'll make a new ceramic material. So I can probably name these, so we'll call that displaced or ceramic displaced, and then the other one ceramic plane. So then I'm going to go to my multi-sub-object material and simply drag the ceramic displaced material onto the number 2 slot as an instance, and then drag the plane material onto the number 1 slot again as an instance. Now that whole multi-material will go onto this, and I'm just going to make sure I'm out of sub-object mode. Drag that across. Might drag my edit poly under the UVW map. There we go. So render that now. Okay, so it's fixed the sides, but we've still got some issues with the way that surface is being displaced, just because I'm probably displacing it a bit too much. It's coming up above. Okay, so to resolve that, you just need to look at the image that you're using. So, and again, the amount. So I can go back to my ceramic displaced material and just play with that amount. It's probably better if it's a subtle effect rather than trying to go too far. Okay, so that's using a displacement material. The other option I showed you last week is using a displacement modifier, which is slightly different and in some ways simpler, but also has certain drawbacks. So just to finish up there, I'm going to assign the ceramic plane material to my object. So just to prove that to you, I'll render that now. It's just a plain ceramic tile again. And then this time, I'm going to take the UVW map, the edit poly modifier I'll take off and just leave the UVW map there. I'm going to go back to my original box, and I need to add segments to do it this way. So just like you've been doing with that building, you need to have more geometry because it's deforming the geometry. It's not done using a material. So with edge faces, you can see the faces there. So I've got a lot. As I zoom in, you can see. Probably don't need quite that many for length. Okay, so then if I put the displace modifier on, then click on the bitmap button where it says none, I can choose that same image. And I'll increase the strength so you can see it's already doing something because this one's flat on the ground, so you won't need to make as many adjustments as you might have if you've tried doing this with vertical tiles. And a good option there is to, well in this case I'll put the displace modifier above the UVW map just so I can use this option here, use existing mapping. And that way I don't need to worry so much about getting the size of my image right. And so then really the strength is going to be a main option there. So you can see if I make this really high, that effect is really clear, but it's nice if it's more subtle, exactly, yeah. So a bit of restraint there is often a good thing, and So that's using the geometric approach. But it's harder to get more detail because, again, you're deforming the geometry, and there's a limit with something like a box to the detail you can put in there. It'll also make the scene very heavy. And so in many cases it's better to try and do it with a material. But again, there are drawbacks with that approach. So you just need to work out what's the best approach for you. Also, the view direction makes a big difference. So if you play around with that, also play around with your lighting. So the lighting direction and height, if I bring this light down so it's more of an oblique angle, maybe get a bit more contrast. Then the shadows should be clearer and I can maybe pick up that effect more clearly. There we go. So lots of things you can play with. It's still definitely required in most cases that you go into Photoshop and enhance these and manipulate them much further, but you can get effects that would be difficult, if not impossible, using Photoshop this way as well. So that's just using the default render settings. If you want to play around with the render options, you'll see then you can set things much higher. And maybe the only thing I'll point out there, if you want to increase the resolution, it's not in the normal options you have down here. You need to click on Render Setup. So you can see there, that's only on 640 by 480, which is the way computer screens used to be 20 years ago. So do you know what normal, well, maybe what's HD resolution? You'd see it most days when you're changing the channel, it comes up. Yeah, 1080? Is that? Yeah, 1920 by 1080, that's it, yeah. So when you see that on your TV, yeah, that's where it comes from. So if we go to, say, PAL, that's the old one, sorry, HD TV, we'll have it. There we go, 1920 by 1080. That's not a bad resolution to start with. Render. It's going to take a bit longer, but we'll get more detail. Then you also have these other options down here which will increase the quality as well. Right, so see how you go, but I just thought those steps might be handy. And once you get a good studio set up like that, you can do it much better than I've done it. You can add a few more lights in if you know how to do three-point lighting, things like that. Get a nice studio set up, keep it as simple as you can, but just a room where you can put objects in that you've designed, and then you can do quick renders off that have that nice ambient and diffuse lighting. So again, that's going to take a bit longer to render because mainly the resolution is that much higher. So I'll just finish up there.